Good afternoon. Hope everybody had a nice lunch. We're going to continue our program. I'd like to introduce once again Dr. Michael Bone. He will be speaking this evening, so I would like to remind everybody that this evening Dr. Michael Bone will be talking about treatment solutions. So without any further ado, here's Dr. Michael Bone.
Great. Thank you, Jay. Good afternoon. I've known Jayne Major for, I don't know how many years, several years, a number of years. Jayne is probably one of the most important thinkers and purveyors of programs as far as parenting goes. Her background, I think, suits her well to this. She has a PhD from UCLA in the philosophy of education, so her perspective really is to look at, and I love the word epistemology, which I mispronounced just then, but that's in the presentation, so I'm glad that's going to be right on the surface here. She has started a program of parenting called Breakthrough Parenting, which is available in many different media, and you see the response. I mean, it's a very, very effective, rationally based program that I think is worth a hard look by everyone, especially parents involved in parental alienation cases. Breakthrough Parenting is a nonprofit. Jayne's located in Los Angeles, but she works with families and parents all over the United States and Canada. She is also the founder of the advocacy group Stop Parental Alienation of Children, and she's authored many articles and is a contributor to the International Handbook on Parental Alienation Syndrome. And she's a neat person to work with, so I recommend her to you highly.
Thank you. Thank you. I've been looking forward to this moment, to be with you for a really long time, and appreciate it. I'd like to honor and thank Joe Goldberg for the massive amount of work that he has put into this. He is making such a difference in this field to bring us all together. Most of us have only known each other by names or talked to each other on the phone, but we've never really met. And what a pleasure it is to actually meet people and share information with them. This is such a wonderful step forward in the field of a focused conference for 3 days on one subject that's as important as parental alienation syndrome. So I'm grateful, Joe. I'd also like to start off by talking about Jim Cook. David was mentioning Jim Cook. None of us would be here today if it weren't for this pioneer in the field of joint custody, shared custody. When Jim discovered in the 70s that when he went to pick up his 7-8-year-old son, the mother said, don't bother. He just brushed him off, and he said, that's my son. And she says, you don't have custody of him, I get to say. And in fact, the law was that if the father didn't get along with the mother, then it was up to the mother to decide if he saw the child or not. And she was on the decision-making end of saying no, and was going to just leave him out. So he said, I'll go to court and sue, and he discovered that there was no law at all for joint custody. Nothing. And he said, if that's the case, I'm going to change the law. I will make a law. And very bright man, very accomplished in his life already, and he single-handedly lobbied the assembly people of the California legislature, and in 1980, for the very first time, fathers had a right, a legal right, to see their children. Isn't that amazing? He was tireless and going all over to every conference, every rally. He would show up and promote joint custody, shared custody. I'm really grateful I had a chance to be his friend later in his life, because he was what a legacy, what a legacy. My academic training is indeed in the field of philosophy. I know I look like a psychologist or like a lawyer or something like that, but people are always really surprised when I say, no, I'm actually a philosopher, and they don't know what to do with that. But my life's work has been in education, so I've looked at things from the educational side of things, not necessarily the therapeutic side or the legal side. My studies in epistemology, which means the study of truth. How do we know what we know? What is true? How can we verify what is true? And ethics and logic has greatly influenced my thinking about the phenomenon of the billion-dollar industry called family law. When I was asked to give a title to my speech, this title came, am I clicking? I need to get used to what I'm doing here. Next. Oh, too fast. Back. Thank you. This title just occurred to me. The Macabre Dance, a Family Law Court, Abnormal Psychology, and Parental Alienation Syndrome. It seems to me that what goes on in the name of family law is just macabre. It's just bizarre. It doesn't make sense. The courts are not, excuse me, the courts are not protecting alienated children from the horrendous damage inflicted by disturbed parents or on the children's critical thinking from the devastating loss of one half of their heritage or from a lifetime doomed for failed social relationships and psychiatric disorders. My conclusion after 25 years of working with students in my parenting classes, and by the way, I've taught breakthrough parenting classes for 25 years, 50 weeks a year, continuously. Class is always open. It's an achievement. My 25th anniversary was June 5th last year. A lot of my students came back and celebrated with me. So in my classes and with the clients that have asked over the years to talk to me about their cases, the lawyers, psychologists who have been involved in the family law cases that I've worked on, where parent alienation is an issue, I've just decided that family law is the poorest imaginable way to resolve this kind of difficulty. Thank you. Justice Warren Burger summed it up by saying, our litigation system is too costly, too painful, too destructive, and too inefficient for civilized people. Doesn't that sum it up? My purpose here is to first comment on some observations I've made about the family law court system that too often fails our family and why a revolutionary new approach is needed. I believe it's time for fresh ideas. Well-meaning people in family law courts too often do more damage than good. We'll begin with the macabre dance between the family law court and abnormal psychology. One very serious reason that family law courts fail is because few lawyers or judges or the general public are able to recognize seriously disturbed people who look and often act normal. Yet their numbers are large, and the damage they do to other parents, their children, and the society is staggering. Of all of the psychiatric disorders, there are two kinds that are not commonly understood and have astonishing success at wreaking havoc in family law courts. First, sociopaths. Sociopaths have no moral conscience. They have no pity, no empathy, no sympathy, no compassion. It isn't there. There isn't anything to teach them about it. There isn't any way to cultivate it. It isn't there. Their purpose is to win by domination, and they are cruel. They enjoy making people jump, pulling a fast one, taking control of others, and tormenting them. Harvard psychologist Martha Stout, in her classic book, The Sociopath Next Door, states that 1 in 25 people are sociopaths. Do you know anyone like that? Let's see if we can find one. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh, David. Okay. And then we're not through. If 1 in 25 people is a sociopath, as she says, that's an astonishing number. But we're not through. Without counting those individuals with other psychiatric problems, such as bipolar, depressive, or obsessive-compulsive disorder, there is an estimated 20% of the general population with personality disorders. That is 1 in 5 people. Of the 10 disorders, those individuals who are most dangerous and are likely to end up in our family court system are described in the DSM-4 Axis 2 Cluster B. They are the borderline, narcissistic, histrionic, and antisocial personality disorders. The 20% figure comes from recent research sponsored by the National Institutes of Health and the National Institute of Alcohol Abuse and Alcoholism, as reported in 3 articles that can be found in the Journal of Psychiatry, published in July of 2004, April and July of 2008. Let's see. If 1 in 25 people are sociopaths, if 1 in 5 people have a personality disorder, we have had a 50% divorce rate for years now. These numbers are sobering. The devastating effect is that the numbers of healthy families is continually being eroded away. The cellular unit of any society is the family. Without strong families, there isn't a strong society. We are witnessing serious decline in the rational thinking, moral judgment, and with the economic collapse worldwide. In this time of change, we all need to start thinking outside of the proverbial box. Let us look at the characteristics of these people. A personality disorder is a person with a pervasive character flaw that has always been present and cannot be fixed. These are people who are unable to compromise or work out solutions without conflict. They lack insight, they do not realize how they contribute to the problem, and they expect to have their own way. They blame others, they can't self-correct, they have difficulty in forming trusting relationships, they are unreasonable and demanding, they create upset and distress with people around them, and they justify their inappropriate behavior. They have a my way or the highway mindset. Now, more and more is known about personality disorders, and there's been a lot of interesting research and brilliant thinkers that have come forward about these people. I'd like to call your attention to Bill Eddy's work, E-D-D-Y, Bill Eddy, at the High Conflict Institute. He is brilliant in many of the depth of his thinking and his protocol for how to work with personality disorders. Also, for years now, I have recommended to my clients the book Stop Walking on Eggshells by Randy Kruger. I understand now she has a new edition, just like Doug Darnell has a brand new edition of his classic, Divorce Casualties. She has a new edition of that, Stop Walking on Eggshells. I strongly recommend it to you because there you will find strategies about how to deal with these people. The therapy is a little help with these individuals as their disorder is not fixable. The reason is that you can't have a conversation about a problem when the problem is answering the question. Gregory Lester said that once. I thought, that is really interesting. You can't have a conversation about a problem when the problem is answering the question. It's very hard to solve problems with these people. It is useless to tell these individuals about their disorder because they will simply not accept it as true. In fact, instead of me, it's got to be you. In order for therapy to work, a person must recognize that he or she has a problem and want to make changes to correct their behavior. This cure-all of sending such people to therapy is of little value. In fact, because sociopaths have no moral conscience, therapy gives them the language and skills to manipulate others more effectively. It helps them become better at being sociopaths, since they learn empathic language and behaviors that are not natural to them, and they can turn around and use these to manipulate people with greater ease. Disturbed people often get, did I not turn it? Disturbed people often get the upper hand in court because they make numerous false allegations, which takes attention off of them and onto the targeted parent. For example, issues of domestic violence, accusations of drug abuse, sexual molestation, and you people in this room know the list goes on, of false allegations that they use to get the attention off of them. And they do not have a conscience that tells them not to do this. For example, fabricating, let's see. The delays in sorting out these false allegations plays out into their power and control very nicely. Furthermore, they are terrible parents. While they may attend to the routines of child care just fine, there is often serious role reversal where the child is there to take care of the parent's emotional needs and, of course, sometimes financial needs as well. Children learn early that they have to please the disturbed parent, or the consequences for not doing so are most unpleasant. In observing psychological evaluations, of which I've read hundreds of them over the years, I have a few observations about them. Psychological evaluations can be quite problematic. First of all, every evaluator walks into an evaluation with personal bias, of which you're going to hear a lot about that from Mike Bone tonight, which they don't even realize they have that bias. They may be overly influenced by the disturbed parent. A policy of offering middle-of-the-road recommendations is a very common practice. We go to psych evaluators to get a decision. We go to a judge to get a decision of which we can't manage to do on our own. And yet, over and over again, I see evaluations that say, well, joint custody to both parents, or it's just a middle-of-the-road thing, when the situation cries out for a decision to be made at that point. If they don't work it out, the plan is you can come back and we'll do a review, and you can go back to court and see if you can settle it in the future. So that's a real concern, that the serious decisions aren't made from the get-go of what needs to happen in the family. And a bone of contention that I have is that psychologists are not willing to label disturbed parents. So I'd like to expand on that. Psychologists have very good reasons not to label, not to say that's a borderline, that's a narcissist, that's a sociopath, and put it in any kind of court records, because a judge can't decide on the basis of a label. A judge has to decide on the basis of evidence. Now, that's all well and good. But the only highly qualified, trained clinical psychologist or psychiatrist is legally allowed to make a diagnosis. Psychologists do not like to label people because there's often a lack of agreement with the diagnosis among psychologists. It's very hard to get one person to agree with another about a diagnosis. Frequently, there are multiple complicating factors with these people. Labeling someone may prevent them from getting therapeutic intervention when it really would be a valuable thing for them to do. And labels can be used inappropriately and can be tossed around very detrimentally to the person being so labeled. Now, Oh, I'm already over here. So the conclusion is we don't want people running amok and making diagnoses, lay people, without verifying their conclusions with a clinical psychologist or a psychiatrist. And by the way, they don't want to talk about that anyway. So given the high number of disordered people that are in our culture, the average person needs to be made aware, I think, of their existence. Judges don't know about them, and attorneys don't know about them. The lay people don't know about them. I think that the narcissists, the borderline, the histrionic, and the antisocials should be broadcast so that people know that these disordered people exist. Otherwise, how can you make decisions? Thank you. How do you Google, "My husband is a monster," and get what you need to get? How do you Google, "My wife is a disaster. My wife is horrible"? You need to have something to hang your hat on. You need to know some idea, ballpark idea, of whether what is wrong. I don't know how many people, like Amy said, I've like a nickel too, for everybody said that I never knew that there was a name for parental alienation. So once you have a name for what you're experiencing, you can actually do some research and find out you're not alone and what have other people done about it. I think that we're doing a disservice, I want to repeat that, by not making it widely broadcast that these disordered people exist, what they are like, how they behave, and most of all, what can we do about it. Now, Amy Baker, Doug Darnell, and Richard Warshak in Divorce Poison, Bill Eddy, Randy Kruger, author of Stop Walking on Eggshells. There are a lot of excellent ideas about how to handle these people. And you have to handle them. You have to get over the idea that you're going to fix them. But there are ways to manage them. For one thing, very few people realize that these individuals are functioning at a very primitive, childlike level, like a 2-3-year-old. And that what happens is that they have no authority figure over them. They take so much power and control in situations that they have no boss, nobody to rein them in. And what they are really seeking is a parent who provides boundaries and limits on their behavior and teaches them and instructs them and so on. That parent becomes a judge. In these families, the only person that they can go to that has authority is a judge. Now, these families are going back over and over and over to the judge to get a decision when, because they can't they have to try to contain the problem. So the judge is putting in that kind of interesting position, being a parent to these people. Problem is that judges are not trained in family systems, child development, or abnormal psychology. They were never interested in the touchy-feely world of psychology. Judges have overwhelming court calendars. Once I had this unusual opportunity for me to have dinner and sit next to one of the top, most popular family law judges in Los Angeles. And I realized that everybody was in a mellow mood, including the judge, and that I could ask this judge any question I wanted to ask her, and she'd probably give me a straight answer. So I thought, and finally I said, "Do you ever think about the people that are in your courtroom? Do you ever wonder how it turned out for them?" And she said, "Never. Never." And there was a long pause. And then she said, "If I did, I'd go crazy." Now that kind of freaked me out a little. So I was at a conference and I saw this other nice judge, and I went up to her and I said, "This is what the other person said. What do you say? Do you ever think about the people that were in your courtroom and how it turned out for them?" And she thought for a minute and she said, "No." And she said, "The reason is that when I go to court every morning, my calendar is so full. It is everything I can do to get through that calendar. I don't have time to think about the people that have come before me." So the concern is that the judges don't have training in ab-psych. They don't know about parental alienation. I don't know how many times I've been called to be an expert witness to teach a judge what parental alienation is. It's the worst classroom in the world to be sitting on a stand and you get maybe a sound bite of 10 minutes to instruct a judge as to what it is because they're unbelievably ignorant. I've said over and over again, why don't they do their homework and get themselves educated as to what it is, since it's a common problem. Once I had an attorney say, what prevails in court is not the truth, but the illusion of truth. Many parents engage in magical thinking that the judge loves them and their children and will listen to their complaint and give them what they want. However, what prevails in court is not the truth, but the illusion of truth. Asking a stranger to solve your family problems is a perilous path indeed. One attorney told my class, if you want fair, go to Pomona in the fall. Pomona is where the county fair is held every year. After an initial attempt to find resolution with their family conflict through the courts, most parents begin wondering about the philosophical issues that I wonder about. What is logical, what is true, and what is ethical? And most of all, why don't people understand how serious the problem is? Lawyers are advocates for their clients, not for the family or their children. Some lawyers make their clients look superior and the targeted parent appear inferior when the opposite is true. Litigation can become a sport of winning and losing combatants by some lawyers. This is very concerning. Most parents think that the attorney is there to help them take good care of the child, but each parent wants what they want and thinks that in terms of the best interest that they know what's in the best interest of their child. Well, let's take a look at that. The principle to use as a guide that is often used as a slogan is more often used as a slogan to justify what is not in a child's best interest. And many of you in this room have just felt your heart sink as custody went to the most disturbed parent. That was not in the child's best interest. So the result can be disastrous. Litigation can cause substantial losses to the well-being of a family, a poor outcome that family members won't support, and unresolved misery. The social costs of divorce, the way we handle it in the United States and Canada, is truly difficult to wrap my head around. The dance between family law courts and those who are psychiatrically disturbed is truly macabre. In the interest of serving truth, logic, and ethics, we need to commit ourselves to finding a better way. And one example of how to make a massive change in society is to have better parent education. So I'm going to take advantage of this opportunity to be with you to diverge a bit into the phenomenon of parent education. I've been teaching parenting classes for as long as I said, 25 years. I've developed a whole curriculum, a skill-based curriculum that shows parents how to communicate effectively, how to negotiate a win-win solution, how to manage conflict and stress, how to protect a child's self-esteem, the basics of what it takes to be a wonderful parent. The name of my program is Breakthrough Parenting, Moving Your Family from Struggle to Cooperation. I believe that parenting is the most important job that we will ever have in our lives. Think of the investment that a parent makes in a child, and that we don't give a second thought to the need to be educated in this most important job we will ever have. Parenting is not routinely taught in our schools, and if we came from a dysfunctional family, we didn't get those parenting skills there. So I think that parent education should be compulsory. While I'm in this kind of utopian world that I like to live in, the ideal world that philosophers like to contemplate should be compulsory. Few people understand, I was quoted in the LA Times a year ago, people underestimate the complexity and difficulty of parenting children. Given what is at stake, a lifetime of misery or joy, parents should run, not walk, to parenting classes. Yet we don't have that consciousness of how important parenting is. We will go to a therapist in a heartbeat. Yet parent education will stabilize families very quickly if people would take advantage of it. So a paradigm shift is needed from what we've been doing. We need to preserve the well-being of the whole family, use mediation, education, and prompt legal intervention. Financial issues are worked out by professionals. So I'm going to present to you a model that I've dreamed up about how to handle separating families in an entirely different way. One of the bases of this new plan is a 6 weeks educational course in the do's and don'ts of divorcing a person. And in that 6 weeks, that's 18 hours, 3 hours each time, people will learn the do's and don'ts. I'll get back to that in a minute. The cost of resolving family difficulties would be minimal compared to the way that we do it in family law court. Parents have a place to go at all times when the family plan is not working. High conflict disputes are minimized or eliminated in many cases. The results of using this method that I'm proposing would have a healthy impact on society, as we would not be passing from one generation to the next the abusive practices of people who are mentally unstable. Parents pay for services according to their ability to pay, the 6-hour course, and would be the use of highly trained professionals who understand family systems and psychological pathology to work in teams to identify the causes of family problems and make interventions. Parents pay for services, parents pay for services according to the ability to pay, and I think I said that. So let's take a look at this plan. First of all, there is a presumption that both parents share custody of the children 50-50, period. We start with that. Timeshare is decided according to the developmental needs of the child and the family as a whole. I think that we need to get past the gender wars that we've been in for so long. I think that dads have totally proven that they are capable of parenting in the full sense of the word of a parent. Other than the biology of the matter, they are fully capable of taking care of a child, and that should no longer be disputed. Tier 1, there's 4 tiers to my plan. There is a case manager that completes a detailed family assessment as they walk through the door. They provide orientation material to the process they're going through, and the case manager takes care of all records. And first of all, the case manager should be mindful as to whether this is a marriage that can be saved. And if the marriage can be saved, then they would be assigned a person who would be an expert in how to preserve marriages. It's a problem-solving method. So, I'm a little mixed up here. So now we get to the financial part. Their parents meet with a financial advisor who helps them make decisions about child support and spousal support, distribution of property, investigate abuses of community property. There's a division, in other words, that does nothing but the finances. They also could offer courses in how to manage finances after divorce, and they always have a place to go related to the financial issues of the family to talk things over. The parents make agreements to pay for their services at that place. Parents are charged according to their ability to pay for the services that they receive. Now the parents are assigned to a mediator. And I loved what Bill Finley had to say yesterday, the mediator. At this point, the mediator is on, after the case manager, is on the front line making some determinations about the family. They read the family history. They orient the parents to the dissolution. They explain the 6 weeks divorce education class, provide information regarding paralegal services, ask parents to complete a detailed parent plan. The children are provided with therapeutic divorce adjustment groups according to their ages. Mediator is notified if a child appears unduly upset, and help is arranged to provide for a child whatever is needed at that point. Don't send them to a play therapist, though. Okay, Tier 1, education. Now, the 6 weeks course, this is my thinking of what should go into the course. First of all, the do's and don'ts of divorce and consequences for inappropriate behavior are laid out. Parents, and the biggest consequence is the parents would lose time with the child if they are behaving inappropriately. We're starting with 50-50 and then breaking it up according to the needs of the child and the family. But inappropriate behavior is thoroughly discussed. What is parent alienation? How to avoid it? And parents make agreements regarding how to treat each other with respect. Now, at this point, one of the things is that if things get out of hand, it's your obligation, if you are the targeted parent, it is your obligation to report inappropriate behavior. And if you don't report inappropriate behavior to your mediator, or whoever's there, the supervisor, then you're complicit in the problem. You have to be part of the solution. Week 2, how children experience divorce. And I think that Children in the Middle is an excellent program for this. There are a lot of excellent programs that have already been developed that could be used. In week 3, adjustment parents make after divorce, stress management. Week 4, conflict resolution. Week 5, resolving financial matters in the family and preparing for the future. Week 6, resources for parents, invitation to go back to the mediator if needed. And I believe that when parents know better, they do better, and that's the purpose of this 6 weeks course, to provide a foundation for parents to have an education about what they're doing. Additional services are available, which would be parent education classes, private therapy, alcohol, drug intervention, anger management, domestic violence issues, and sexual behavior problems. So there are a lot of resources, and every parent's invited to go to private therapy if that's what they want. The case manager will, the mediator will close a case when the parents are communicating effectively, solving problems in a win-win way. And there's always an invitation to go back to the mediator if new problems arise. All information is sent to the case manager. There is one place where all of the records are kept for this family. In the case of severe conflict, you're all waiting for this part. The mediator is trained to recognize these personality disorders, the sociopath, the inappropriate behavior, and it isn't hard to spot them. Right away, it's obvious that some people will not negotiate, they're always stirring up trouble, they're not stable. And in those cases, they are referred to a supervisor at Tier 2. And we're going to call this the supervisor. So the supervisor obtains a judicial order to evaluate the family. The supervisor reviews all work to date and meets with the parents. The psychological testing may be ordered as well as parenting skills assessment inventory. Did I click it? If necessary, depends on what's happening in the family, but the supervisor will determine that. If necessary, parents meet with separate clinical psychologists for the purpose of addressing psychological adjustment. Now, why two separate clinical psychologists? Why not have one psychologist meet both parents? I've had two occasions, one in my class and one at a professional association I was a part of, where clinical psychologists have said, I know in the first 5 minutes how the case is going to turn out. After meeting both parents, they know within 5 minutes how the case will turn out. And that bothered me. It bothered me a lot. That snap judgment, that bias that Mike Bone talks about is right there up front. And other people in that group, that professional group, were agreeing with, yes, all of the rest of it is just evidence to prove what your first assumption was. Now, I'd like them to see different psychologists so that they can assess the person as a person, not in relation to the other parent. At that point, when the testing results are in and the clinical psychologists have met with the people, they meet in a team. Let's see where I'm at. Each member of the team prepares a written report with recommendations. The team meets to share information and make a group decision as what will happen to help this family. The supervisor meets with the family to share results and recommendations and will follow up with the parents. Now, this is enormously important, I think, that we miss the boat by having one person do an evaluation. The chance is so great for error if with one person doing it. And the chances for error is always going to be there. But if you have a talented team of people looking at a situation, I think you're going to get more positive results. Now, if the family becomes stable at this time, the supervisor closes the case with an invitation to go back to their mediator at any time further if more help is needed. If the family remains unstable, the supervisor refers them to Tier 3, the special master. And you've been calling it earlier the parent coordinator. In some places it's called something different. But in California, it's this new group called the special master. The special master reviews the case, the data, and the family, and decides what legal action is necessary. The special master has a quasi-legal authority to make decisions for the family, such as the education of the children, the medical care, and so on. And at Tier 3, the special master works with the family and makes a determination about what needs to happen legally in this family. At this point, parents may get an attorney to represent their interests because if there are serious and unfixable problems, the special master makes recommendations to the court. Parents may get attorneys. Tier 4, the judicial officer, a case is presented to them. The special master presents evidence and recommendations to the court. The judge decides issues such as significantly reducing timeshare, move-away issues, termination of parental rights, adoption issues, and so on. So that's my plan. The advantages of this plan is that there's one set of records for each family. Now, that's serving the epistemological condition of what's the truth about the family. There's one set of data and information. Educational programs instruct parents how to make healthy decisions regarding each other and their children. A lot of problems, I've been an educator all my life, can be solved right there in the educational part. Mediation to resolve family conflict is more effective with better long-term results than litigation. So people agree with decisions they make together and are willing to follow through better than if a judge imposes decisions on them. Parents preserve family assets. They do not have to spend their savings, their IRAs, their children's college fund, or their home equity. Decisions are made on accurate assessment among highly trained professionals, enhancing a positive outcome. This model allows for a fast intervention in families with a disturbed parent. Children are provided with the help they need to make a positive adjustment to their parent's separation. Far less court time is needed by judges. There's far less cost to maintain an expensive family law court system. Now, their challenges are myriad, so I'll offer a few. Keeping standards high for professionals working with families. This has to be done by an agency that is not part of the family law court system. They should work with the family law court system but not be a part of it. They should be independent of that. The problem of getting into a heavy bureaucracy where things just bog down, that we would not want to happen. Keeping standards high for professionals, there should be oversight of what people are doing. I don't see how in the family law court as we have it today, there's much oversight as to what attorneys are doing, evaluators are doing, judges are doing, and so on. Some family law lawyers may feel displaced and be unsupportive. Problems can arise with enforcement with mentally unstable people. Grants will be necessary to begin a pilot study of the model. Implementation, judicial backing, and legislation will be needed to support the program. A non-court agency needs to work with the family law court to deliver services. So, a call to action. If you see merit in what I'm proposing, and if you agree that we need to revolutionize, not reform, the family law system with a more humane way of handling family reorganizations, please feel free to contact me. And ask yourself, what are you willing to do to make a difference? Thank you.
Well, let's give another round of applause, please, to Dr. Jayne Major. Thank you so much, Jayne. That was a marvelous presentation. Thank you. Well, again, I'd like to say that this conference never would have been possible without the support of many sponsors. I'd like to introduce a sponsor who's here today. Her name is Stephanie Zakor. She's with Sterling Mutuals, Inc., and she's going to introduce our next speaker. So please give a warm welcome to a wonderful sponsor, Stephanie Zakor.